November 10th, 1942. 05:47 hours, the Lazur Chemical Plant, Stalingrad. Vasily Zaitsev hasn't moved in 11 hours. His face is pressed against frozen rubble that smells of cordite and death. Through his scope, he watches a piece of corrugated iron, a sheet maybe 3 feet wide, propped against shattered concrete 40 meters away. Behind it, somewhere in the shadows, is the man Berlin sent to kill him. For 5 days, they've hunted each other through these ruins. 5 days without a shot fired. 5 days of waiting, watching, breathing in sync with the wind. Zaitsev has killed 225 Germans in this city. 11 of them were snipers. But this one is different. This one knows every trick Zaitsev knows, every deception, every patient hour of absolute stillness that separates the living from the dead. The German's name is Heinz Thorvald. He runs the Reich sniper school. He's killed more men than Zaitsev has fired bullets. And right now, somewhere behind that corrugated iron, he's looking for the same thing Zaitsev is looking for. One mistake, one shadow that moves wrong, one breath taken at the wrong moment. In the next 60 seconds, one of them will find it. They started calling him the Hare in October. Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev was 27 years old, barely 5'6", with a shepherd's build and hunter's eyes. He'd grown up in the Ural Mountains tracking wolves and elk with his grandfather, a man who taught him that hunting wasn't about shooting, it was about patience, about becoming part of the landscape, about knowing your prey better than it knew itself. When the Wehrmacht reached Stalingrad in August 1942, the city became a slaughterhouse, block by block, building by building. Sometimes room by room. The Germans had superior firepower, better equipment, and absolute air superiority. They were grinding the Red Army into dust. Then Zaitsev arrived with the 1047th Rifle Regiment. He didn't look like much. His uniform was too big. His Mosin-Nagant rifle was standard issue, nothing special, no modifications, just a bolt-action rifle that had been manufactured by the thousands. But when Battalion Commander Nikolai Batyuk watched Zaitsev kill 2 German officers at 800 meters with consecutive shots, he knew what he had. A weapon. Within weeks, Zaitsev was averaging 5 kills per day. Not suppression fire, not lucky shots, deliberate, patient, surgical kills. He'd position himself in rubble piles for 8, 10, 12 hours, waiting for a Wehrmacht officer to check his watch or a machine gunner to light a cigarette. Then, one shot, one kill. Disappear into the ruins before the Germans could even figure out where the bullet came from. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers stopped moving during daylight. Officers hid their rank insignia. Entire companies would freeze when someone whispered, "The Hare is watching." Wehrmacht after-action reports from October 1942 mention extreme caution required due to enemy sniper activity in sectors where Zaitsev operated. Morale collapsed. Units refused to advance. The Red Army propaganda machine turned Zaitsev into a legend. His face appeared on leaflets dropped over German positions. "Your commanders are cowards. They hide while Vasily Zaitsev hunts them." Radio broadcasts described his kills in graphic detail. Soldiers in other regiments started claiming they'd fought alongside him. He became larger than life. But the reality was simpler and more terrifying. Zaitsev was just a hunter who'd traded elk for men, and he was very, very good at it. By early November, his confirmed kill count stood at 225. But it was the 11 snipers that mattered most. Every Wehrmacht sniper sent to Stalingrad to counter him had died. Some lasted days. One lasted 40 minutes. They'd arrive with confidence in German engineering, superior optics, better rifles, formal training from the finest schools in the Reich. Zaitsev killed them all. He'd study their patterns. German snipers were trained to shoot from covered positions, inside buildings, behind walls, anywhere with overhead protection. Zaitsev would position himself in open rubble, exposed to artillery and air attack, because Germans never looked for snipers in such vulnerable positions. When the German sniper settled into his safe hide, Zaitsev already had him ranged, one shot, one kill. But killing 11 snipers had an unintended consequence. It got the attention of SS-Standartenführer Heinz Thorvald. The name appeared in Soviet intelligence intercepts on November 4th. A decoded Wehrmacht radio transmission mentioned specialist personnel deployed to Stalingrad sector with the code name Thorvald. Soviet officers shrugged. Another sniper, another hunter sent to kill the hare. Zaitsev wasn't worried. He'd seen a dozen German snipers come and die. What he didn't know was that Thorvald wasn't coming to hunt him. Thorvald was coming to hunt with him. Thorvald didn't announce himself with rookie mistakes. On November 6th, the day Soviet intelligence believed he arrived, Zaitsev worked his usual sector around the Lazur Chemical Plant. He positioned himself at dawn in a shell crater, watching Wehrmacht positions across 200 meters of no man's land. By 1400 hours, he'd taken 3 shots, 3 kills, a machine gunner who got careless, a lieutenant who stood too long studying a map, a radio man who thought he was safe behind sandbags. Standard day. But as twilight fell and Zaitsev prepared to withdraw, something felt wrong. You spend enough time hunting, you develop instincts that bypass conscious thought. A pressure in the air, a sense of being watched. Zaitsev scanned his surroundings through his scope. Nothing. He waited 30 minutes. Still nothing. Finally, as darkness made shooting impossible, he crawled backward out of his position, slowly, methodically, disturbing nothing. The next morning, he returned to inspect the crater. There, in the frozen mud at the crater's edge, was a single boot print. Fresh, maybe 6 hours old. Someone had approached his position during the night and stood there, studying where Zaitsev had spent the entire day. Not a German patrol. A patrol would have left multiple tracks. This was one man. One set of prints, someone who'd tracked Zaitsev to his hide and then disappeared like smoke. For the first time in months, Vasily Zaitsev felt something he hadn't felt since the Ural Mountains. He felt like prey. November 7th, Zaitsev changed tactics. Instead of his usual exposed positions, he hid inside a collapsed building with 3 separate exit routes. He spent the entire day watching, waiting for Wehrmacht movement. Nothing unusual, no shots taken. As evening approached, he withdrew through his primary exit, a ground-floor window that led into a rubble-strewn courtyard. Halfway through the window, he froze. There, carved into the wooden window frame with a knife, was a single symbol, a small cross, like a German military marker. It hadn't been there when he'd entered. Someone had marked his exit while he was inside. Thorvald was announcing himself, not with bullets, with messages, with proof that he could get close to Zaitsev without being seen, without being heard, that he knew where Zaitsev would be and where he'd go. The psychological warfare was exquisite. Every Soviet sniper hunted Germans. But now Zaitsev was the one being stalked, and Thorvald was making sure he knew it. On November 8th, Zaitsev didn't hunt. He studied. He interviewed every Soviet soldier who'd seen German sniper activity in the past 3 days. A lieutenant reported that his radio man had been killed by a single shot from an impossible angle, not from a building or fortified position, but from open ground where no sniper should survive. A sergeant described finding a dead German private with a bullet wound that didn't match Soviet calibers. Thorvald had apparently killed one of his own men, possibly for compromising his position. The pattern emerged. Thorvald wasn't hunting like a German sniper. He was hunting like Zaitsev hunted, from exposed positions, using terrain and patience instead of fortification. He was adapting to Soviet tactics, mirroring them, perfecting them. And he'd left no confirmed tracks since that first boot print. Zaitsev realized he was facing something he'd never encountered, a hunter who understood him, who'd studied his methods, who'd probably watched newsreels and read intelligence reports and analyzed every kill Zaitsev had made. Most terrifying of all, Thorvald hadn't tried to shoot him yet. He was playing a longer game, building pressure, making Zaitsev question every decision, turning the legendary hare into a nervous, reactive target. On November 9th, Zaitsev made a decision. He'd hunt Thorvald the only way possible, by becoming the bait. He'd position himself in the Lazur Chemical Plant, a massive, bombed-out industrial complex with 1,000 hiding spots and overlapping fields of fire. He'd make himself visible, not obviously visible, but visible enough for a patient observer to spot. And when Thorvald moved to take the shot, Zaitsev would be ready. It was a gamble. If Thorvald was better, if his reflexes were faster, his aim truer, his patience deeper, Zaitsev would die. but doing nothing guaranteed death. Thorvald was too good, too patient. Eventually he'd find an angle, a moment, a mistake. Better to force the confrontation, better to turn this into a test of will. At 600 hours on November 10th, Vasily Zaitsev crawled into position among the ruins of the Lazur plant. He found a spot with good sight lines and questionable cover, the kind of position a desperate or careless sniper might use. And he waited. Somewhere in those ruins, Heinz Thorvald was waiting too. The duel had begun. Hour 1. Nothing moves. Zaitsev's position is a hollow in rubble, bricks, shattered concrete, twisted metal from the chemical plant's destroyed machinery. He's arranged it carefully. To a casual observer, it looks like random debris. To a trained eye, it provides a firing position with 180-degree coverage. To Thorvald's eye, it probably looks like a trap. Hour 3. Zaitsev's legs are going numb. Temperature is maybe -10 Celsius. His breath comes in shallow, controlled exhales that barely disturb the air. He's wrapped his rifle barrel in torn cloth to prevent sun glare. His face is smeared with ash and dirt. He's part of the ruins. Across the devastated landscape of the chemical plant, nothing moves. No German patrols, no Wehrmacht activity. Just silence and the occasional crack of distant artillery. Thorvald is out there. Zaitsev can feel it, that same pressure, that sensation of being observed. But where? Hour 6. The sun moves, shadows shift. Zaitsev studies every piece of cover in his field of view. That collapsed wall 80 meters out, the overturned tanker truck at 150 meters, the pile of rubble that might hide a prone shooter at 200 meters. Nothing. No glint of glass, no movement, no mistakes. Thorvald is either incredibly disciplined or incredibly patient, or both. Hour 10. Zaitsev needs to urinate. He doesn't. Movement now would be fatal. He forces his mind to focus on the environment. Wind direction, northeast, maybe 5 kilometers per hour. Light, fading, golden hour approaching. Temperature, dropping. His fingers are stiff inside his gloves, and then he sees it. Not Thorvald. Something else. A piece of corrugated iron, maybe 3 feet wide, propped against broken concrete about 40 meters to his left. It wasn't there this morning, he's certain. He studied this terrain for 20 minutes before settling into position. That sheet of metal is new. Someone moved it into place. Zaitsev doesn't react, doesn't shift his gaze, doesn't adjust his scope. He continues scanning as if he hasn't noticed, but his mind is racing. The corrugated iron is positioned perfectly to hide a prone shooter. It has a small gap at ground level, 6 inches, maybe 8, just enough for a rifle barrel and a narrow field of view. It's exactly where Zaitsev would position himself if he were hunting someone in Zaitsev's current location. So either Thorvald is behind that iron, or he wants Zaitsev to think he is. The sun sets. Darkness falls. Neither man moves. Day 2. November 11th. Dawn breaks gray and cold. Zaitsev hasn't slept. Neither has Thorvald, assuming he's still there. During the night, Zaitsev heard movement, distant, careful. Could have been rats, could have been German patrols, could have been Thorvald repositioning. The corrugated iron is still there. Zaitsev spends the entire day watching it. He's looking for micro-movements, a shadow that shifts wrong, condensation from breath in the freezing air, the barely perceptible rise and fall of a man breathing, anything, nothing. Hour 36 total. Zaitsev's body is shutting down. Hunger he can ignore. Thirst is harder. His mouth tastes like copper and ash. His vision is starting to blur at the edges. Early hypothermia maybe, or just exhaustion. He forces himself to stay alert. Professional snipers in this era didn't have the luxury of spotter teams or relief shifts. You held your position until the mission ended or you died. Zaitsev has done 3-day stakeouts before. He can do 5. He hopes. Day 3, November the 12th. A German patrol crosses the plant at mid-morning, 15 men moving cautiously through the ruins. Zaitsev watches them through his scope. Easy shots. He could drop 3 before they found cover. He doesn't fire, because Thorvald is watching too. And if Zaitsev shoots, he reveals his exact position. Thorvald would have his shot before Zaitsev could cycle the bolt. The German patrol passes. Neither sniper fires. The soldiers have no idea that two of the deadliest shooters in Stalingrad are within 100 meters, watching them walk past like ghosts. Day 4, November 13th. Zaitsev is hallucinating. Small things, peripheral movements that aren't there, sounds that don't exist. He knows it's stress and exhaustion. He knows his body is failing. But knowing doesn't stop it. The corrugated iron hasn't moved, not a centimeter, not in 4 days. Is Thorvald really there? Or is it a decoy? Did he position the iron, then withdraw, knowing Zaitsev would fixate on it while Thorvald circled to a completely different angle? Zaitsev considers abandoning his position. This is madness. 4 days without food, water, or sleep. But if he moves and Thorvald is watching from some other position, he's dead. And if he stays and Thorvald isn't behind the iron, he's wasting time while the German sets up the real shot. It's paralysis, strategic paralysis, the ultimate sniper's dilemma. Then Zaitsev remembers his grandfather's advice. When you don't know what to do what the animal doesn't expect. He decides. Tomorrow, he'll force Thorvald's hand. One way or another, this ends. Day 5, November 14th, 07:30 hours. Zaitsev has a plan. It's simple. It's dangerous. It might get him killed. He's going to make Thorvald shoot. Nearby, within arm's reach, is a Soviet helmet. It belonged to a dead soldier, one of hundreds scattered across Stalingrad's ruins. Zaitsev has positioned it carefully over the past hour, mounting it on a broken piece of rebar. Now it sits just below his position, nestled in rubble, barely visible. The plan: raise the helmet slowly, as if a soldier is cautiously peering over cover. Thorvald, if he's behind the corrugated iron, will see movement, he'll see a target, and if he's been waiting 5 days for a shot, his patience will break. He'll fire. The shot will reveal his position, the muzzle flash, the sound, the impact point on the helmet, everything Zaitsev needs to calculate Thorvald's exact location. Then it becomes a question of who shoots second faster. Zaitsev reaches for the helmet. His hand is shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. He steadies it, grips the rebar, begins to raise it millimeter by millimeter. The helmet rises above the rubble line, just the top. Like a soldier being cautious, nothing happens. Zaitsev waits. 10 seconds, 20, still nothing. He raises it higher. Now half the helmet is visible, an obvious target. The world explodes. The crack of a rifle shot shatters the silence. The helmet jerks violently, a hole punched clean through the metal. The sound echoes across the ruins, bouncing off broken walls, making it impossible to pinpoint origin. But Zaitsev doesn't need sound. He saw the impact angle. The bullet entered the helmet from the left front, meaning it came from the corrugated iron. There. He saw it. A tiny puff of dust kicked up by the shot behind the iron sheet. Thorvald shifted position slightly to take the shot, and his movement disturbed settled dust. 40 meters. Behind the iron, prone position, small gap at ground level. Zaitsev has him, but Thorvald knows he's exposed now. He'll be moving, repositioning, trying to relocate before Zaitsev can line up the shot. This is a race measured in heartbeats. Zaitsev swings his rifle toward the corrugated iron. His scope finds the gap at ground level. He can't see Thorvald. The shadows are too deep, the angle too narrow. But he knows the geometry. If Thorvald is prone, and the gap is 8 inches tall, and the range is 40 meters, then Thorvald's head has to be there. Zaitsev sees it, just barely. A shadow within shadows, something that might be a human profile, might be debris. He has one chance. If he's wrong, Thorvald will know his position and return fire. If he's right, he doesn't think. Thinking takes time. He breathes out, halfway, holds. The crosshairs settle on the shadow. His finger tightens on the trigger. The Mosin Nagant kicks. The bullet travels 40 meters in a fraction of a second. It passes through the gap below the corrugated iron. It strikes something soft, something vital. For 3 seconds, nothing happens. The ruins are silent again. Zaitsev stays perfectly still, scope trained on the iron sheet, waiting for return fire, waiting for Thorvald to emerge, waiting for confirmation. Then the corrugated iron shifts, falls, collapses forward into the rubble. Behind it, partially visible now, is a man. He's face down, motionless, a pool of dark blood spreading beneath his head. Zaitsev waits another 5 minutes. It could be a trick, a decoy body. Thorvald could be 100 meters away, waiting for Zaitsev to break cover and investigate. But no shot comes. Finally, Zaitsev rises. His legs nearly collapse. 5 days prone, minimal movement, near zero circulation. He stumbles toward the corrugated iron, rifle raised, ready to fire again. He reaches the body, rolls it over. The face is unfamiliar. German, maybe 40 years old. Distinguished features, an officer's bearing even in death. The bullet entered through the left eye socket, exited through the back of the skull. Instant death. On the man's collar, SS rank insignia, Standartenführer. In his pocket, a leather-bound journal. Zaitsev opens it. The pages are filled with notes in German, detailed observations, sketches of Soviet positions, tactical analyses. And on the first page, written in precise script, SS-Standartenführer Heinz Thorvald, Zossen Sniper School. It's him. Zaitsev closes the journal. For a long moment, he just stands there, looking down at the body of the man who'd stalked him for 5 days. The man Berlin sent to kill their most dangerous enemy. The man who came closer to succeeding than anyone else had. A Soviet patrol arrives minutes later, soldiers who'd heard the shots. They stare at the dead German, then at Zaitsev, not quite believing what they're seeing. "Is that?" one of them starts. "Yes," Zaitsev says quietly. "Take his rifle, take his journal, get them to intelligence." Thorvald's weapon is a Mauser carabiner, 98K with a custom scope, German precision engineering at its finest, worth more than 3 months of a Soviet soldier's pay. Zaitsev hands it over without hesitation. He has no use for trophies. The news spreads through Stalingrad within hours. By evening, it's reached Moscow. Soviet propaganda explodes. Hero of the Soviet Union, Vasily Zaitsev has defeated the Reich's master sniper in single combat. Radio broadcasts describe the 5-day duel in mythic terms. Leaflets are printed and dropped over German positions. "Your best hunter is dead. How many more will you send?" The psychological impact on Wehrmacht morale is devastating. If Thorvald, the director of Germany's premier sniper school, couldn't kill Zaitsev, who could? German soldiers in Stalingrad become even more paranoid, more cautious. Offensive operations slow. Units refuse to move during daylight. Zaitsev himself says almost nothing about the duel. When Soviet journalists interview him, he's matter-of-fact. He was skilled, he was patient, he made one mistake. What mistake, they ask. He got impatient. On day 5. That helmet trick wouldn't have worked on day 1 or 2. But 5 days without sleep, without certainty, everyone breaks eventually. Zaitsev would survive Stalingrad. He'd survive the war. His final confirmed kill count would reach 242, though the actual number is likely much higher. He'd lose an eye to a landmine in 1943, but continue serving as an instructor, training Soviet snipers using methods he'd refined in Stalingrad's ruins. After the war, he'd write a memoir. The chapter about Thorvald is surprisingly sympathetic. Zaitsev describes him as a worthy opponent and notes that in different circumstances they might have been colleagues, sharing techniques and professional respect. But circumstances weren't different. They were snipers. They were enemies. And in Stalingrad, only one could leave. There's a museum in Volgograd now, the city renamed after Stalin's death. In a glass case, they display a Mosin Nagant rifle. The placard reads, "Rifle used by hero of the Soviet Union, Vasily Zaitsev." Next to it is a German Mauser with a shattered scope, reportedly Thorvald's weapon, recovered from his body. Tourists take photos. School groups listen to lectures. Veterans pay quiet respects. But the real story isn't in the museum. It's in those 5 days. 5 days of absolute stillness in -10-degree cold. 5 days where 2 men hunted each other through ruins that had already seen 100,000 deaths. 5 days of psychological warfare that had nothing to do with propaganda and everything to do with will. Thorvald came to Stalingrad to kill a legend. Instead, he became part of one.